Good evening, everybody. It's once again Ted the Speed Learner, and I'm going to now go through Article 3 of the U.S. Constitution. I am actually reading the U.S. Constitution right about now, and I thought you guys would probably want to know all this stuff simply for the fact that we're getting ready to have an election. And we're going to go through Article 3 now. To vest somebody means to give them power and authority over something, okay? And we're going to go through this right here. It says the judicial power of the United States, this would be talking about the Supreme Court here, shall be vested in one Supreme Court, okay? So the biggest judicial power will be in the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court holds the most amount of judicial power in the United States, okay? And in such inferior courts as the Congress may from time to time ordain and establish. Now, that means that the U.S. Congress establishes lower courts, like a courts of appeals, district courts, that kind of thing. That is something Congress establishes. But all of these lower courts are held accountable by the Supreme Court, okay? The judges, both of the Supreme and inferior courts, shall hold their offices during good behavior. In other words, they don't break the law, they hold their officers, okay? And shall, at stated times, receive for their services a compensation which shall not be diminished during their continuance in office. So in other words, once you become a judge, your salary will never go down. It can go up, but it can't go down. So you'll never receive a pay cut while being a judge in the U.S. Justice Department. The way it works. The judicial power shall extend to all cases in law and equity arising under this Constitution, and the laws of the United States and treaties made or which shall be made under their authority, to all cases affecting ambassadors, other public ministers. Now, what is a public minister? This is a politician that holds a high political office. This would be sort of like people that were holding high offices in the president's cabinet. Now, you've heard of the President of the United States has a cabinet, and those people would be public ministers under this definition, okay? Now, in some countries, like in England, okay, England has a prime minister. This is a minister that is over all of the ministers in the English government, okay? So the English government has a prime minister, and then they have other ministers that report to the prime minister. And the prime minister's office in England pretty much is the same as the president's office in the United States. Now, I said it's pretty much the same. There are some differences, but for the most part, you can kind of think of them as fairly equal, okay? So, if you're thinking of some kind of an equal position in England to the United States president, that would be the Prime Minister of England. Sort of like old Margaret Thatcher, okay? Or Tony Blair. He was once the Prime Minister of England. I don't know who he is now, or she. I don't know if it's a he or a she now. But somebody's the Prime Minister of England. I just don't know who it is. Okay. Alright. To all cases of admiralty and maritime jurisdiction, to controversies to which the United States shall be a party, to controversies between two or more states. In other words, if there's a conflict of interest between one state and the next, the United States Supreme Court takes over and tries to resolve it, okay? And how about a situation where a citizen of one state has been offended by the people of another state, okay? So if you have a conflict of interest between a citizen of one state and the government of another state, then the Supreme Court takes over, okay? If you have a conflict between citizens of two different states, the Supreme Court takes over that. Between citizens of the same state claiming lands under grants of different states, okay? So let's say that there are two people that are living in the same state, but they are disputing over lands of different states. Okay, so they have lands in a state that is not their own. Then the Supreme Court starts getting involved. Okay, and between a state or the citizen thereof and foreign states, citizens and subjects. Yeah, that's a lot there. In all cases affecting ambassadors, other public ministers and councils, and those in which a state shall be a party, the Supreme Court shall have original jurisdiction. In other words, the Supreme Court is the final authority when you're dealing with a case that's affecting ambassadors, public ministers, like we said with the Prime Minister of England, and councils, and those in which a state shall be a party. Okay. In all of the cases before mentioned, the Supreme Court shall have appellate jurisdiction, both as to law and fact, with such exceptions and under such regulation as the Congress shall make. The trial of all crimes, except in cases of impeachment, shall be by jury. Okay, so if you're committing a murder, if you're committing theft, that kind of thing, that is decided by a jury. Okay. Now, cases of impeachment, that's decided by the Senate, as I mentioned in a previous video. Okay. And such trial shall be held in the state where the crime shall have been committed. In other words, if you rob somebody in the state of Florida, that's where the trial is going to be held. Might be held in a city different from where the crime was actually committed, but the trial will be held in Florida if you commit the crime in Florida. But when not committed within any state, the trial should be at such a place or places as the Congress may by law have directed. So in other words, if you commit the crime in Puerto Rico, the Congress can decide where your trial is going to be. Treason against the United States shall consist only in levying war against them, or in adhering to their enemies, giving them aid and comfort. No person shall be convicted of treason unless on the testimony of two witnesses to the same overt act, or on confession in open court. So in other words, you can't be convicted of treason unless two people say, hey man, that guy committed treason. Or you're dumb enough to admit in open court that, hey, you committed treason. Alright? The Congress determines the punishment for treason. But no attainder of treason shall work corruption of blood or forfeiture except during the life of the person attained. And don't ask me what that means. I have no idea. But if you know, go ahead and leave a comment down here below. I will tell you more in a future video, so stay tuned.